Okay, so let's recite Namo Tassa 3 times in the usual manner. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, so for today, we are going to continue reading from the book called Great Disciples of the Buddha by Venerable Nyanaponika Thera. And last time where we left off, we read about Venerable Sariputta and how he was very helpful. So the title of the chapter was Venerable Sariputta the Helper. And he was very helpful and very generous with his kindness and also in teaching. And so he was also very helpful as in his leadership qualities as well, taking care of the other monks as well. So today, we will read the chapter on how he is unresentful. How Venerable Sariputta is unresentful. So the Dhammapada commentary records an incident that epitomizes still another outstanding trait of the chief disciple, his patience and forbearance. In the neighborhood of the Jetavana monastery where the Buddha was residing, a group of men were praising the noble qualities of Venerable Sariputta. Such great patience has our elder, they said, that even when people abuse him and strike him, he feels no trace of anger. Who is this that never gets angry? The question came from a brahmin, a holder of false views. And when they told him, "It is our elder, Sariputta," he retorted, "That must be because nobody has ever provoked him." "That is not so, Brahmin," they replied. "Well then, I will provoke him to anger." "Provoke him to anger if you can." "Leave it to me," said the Brahmin. "I know just what to do with him." So when the Venerable Sariputta entered the city on his arms round, the Brahmin approached him from behind and gave him a tremendous blow on the back. "What was that?" said Sariputta. And without so much as turning to look, he continued on his way. The fire of remorse leapt up in every part of the Brahmin's body. Prostrating himself at the elder's feet, he begged for pardon. "For what?" asked the elder mildly. "To test your patience, I struck you," the penitent Brahmin replied. "Very well, I pardon you." So Venerable Sariputta said, "Okay," to the Brahmin, I'll forgive you. Yeah. But initially, Venerable Sariputta didn't even think about, didn't even have any, resentment for the Brahmin. So it was more of the Brahmin feeling remorse more than anything. "Venerable Sir," the Brahmin said, "if you are willing to pardon me, please take your food at my house." And when Venerable Sariputta silently consented, the Brahmin took his bowl and led him to his house, where he served him a meal. But those who saw the assault were enraged. So those who witnessed how the Brahmin had struck a blow on Venerable Sariputta, they were very angry. They gathered at the Brahmin's house armed with sticks and stones, ready to kill him. When Venerable Sariputta emerged, accompanied by the brahmin carrying his bowl, they cried out, "Venerable Sir, order this brahmin to turn back." "Why, lay disciples?" asked the elder. They replied, "The man struck you, and we are going to give him what he deserves." "But what do you mean? Was it you or me that he struck?" So interestingly, others were, trying to kind of put punishment on the brahmin, seek revenge, so to speak, on behalf of Venerable Sariputta. But Venerable Sariputta was more like, his response was more like, well, why do you want to do that? Did he strike a blow on me, or did he strike a blow on you all? So he asked the group of people who wanted to beat up the brahmin. "But what do you mean? Was it you or me that he struck?" "It was you, Venerable Sir." "Well, if it was me he struck, he has begged my pardon. Go your ways." So, dismissing the people and permitting the brahmin to return, the great elder calmly made his way back to the monastery. Venerable Sariputta's humility was as great as his patience. He was willing to receive correction from anyone, not only with submission, but with gratitude. It is told in the commentary to the Susima Sutta, so this is from the Samyutta Nikaya 2.29, that once, through momentary negligence, a corner of the elder's underrobe was hanging down, and a 7-year-old novice, seeing this, pointed it out to him. Venerable Sariputta stepped aside at once and arranged the garment in the proper way. And then he stood before the novice with folded hands, saying, "Now it is correct, teacher." So he was very humble that it doesn't matter if it was a novice, if it was a 7-year-old novice that corrected him, he would consider that correction as something to learn, something to correct himself. There is a reference to this incident in the Milinda Panha, where these verses are ascribed to Sariputta. "If one who has gone forth this day at the age of 7 should teach me, I accept it with a lowered head. At sight of him, I show my zeal and respect. May I always set him in the teacher's place." It was no wonder, therefore, that throughout his life, he continued to show respect for the Venerable Asaji, from whom he had gained his introduction to the Buddha's teaching. We are told in the commentary to the Nava Sutta from the Sutta Nipata, and also in the commentary to the Dhammapada, that whenever Venerable Sariputta lived in the same monastery as the Venerable Asaji, immediately after having paid homage to the Blessed One, he always went to venerate the great elder, thinking, "This Venerable One was my first teacher. It was through him that I came to know the Buddha's dispensation." So if you remember a couple of weeks back, when we read the early encounters of Venerable Sariputta and the Buddha, he learned of the Buddha first through Venerable Asaji, when he saw how Venerable Asaji looked very like, as someone who was of a very high practice. So Venerable Sariputta still regards him as his first teacher. And when the Venerable Asaji lived in another monastery, Venerable Sariputta used to face the direction in which he was living and pay homage to him by touching the ground at 5 places with the head, hands, and feet, and saluting him with joined palms. So when we say touching the ground at 5 places, basically prostration with head on the ground, hand on the ground, and basically kneeling down and prostrating down is what I was trying to say. And saluting him with joint palms. So saluting him in that direction where he was living, Venerable Assaji was living, and then prostrating down. But this practice that Venerable Sariputta did, this led to misunderstanding. When other monks saw Venerable Sariputta acting thus, they say, after becoming a chief disciple, Venerable Sariputta still worships the heavenly quarters. Even today, he cannot give up his Brahmanical views. So they were a little bit, they didn't understand, and they thought that he was doing still some brahmin practice where they worship in different directions. So when these complaints reached the Blessed One, he said, "It is not so, bhikkhus. Venerable Sariputta does not worship the heavenly quarters. He salutes the one through whom he first learned the Dhamma and worships and reveres him as his teacher. Venerable Sariputta is one who gives devout respect to his teacher." It was then that the master preached to the monks the Nava Sutta, which starts with the words, "As the Devas pay devout homage to Indra, so one should revere the person through whom one has learned the Dhamma." So this is how the Buddha explains how we should practice in terms of reverence, in terms of gratitude from who we learn the Dhamma from. And that, in fact, is also part of our practice of not just respect, but also humility, which is a very important part of the practice as well. So another example of the Venerable Sariputta's gratitude is given in the story of the elder Radha. The commentary to the Dhammapada relates that Radha was a poor Brahmin who stayed at the Jetavana monastery at Savatthi. He served as a temple hand. So a temple hand is kind of like, even in modern day nowadays temples, there's typically at least one person. Sometimes they are voluntaries, but most times they are paid staff, where they do all sorts of work, odd jobs, or even, just taking care of the grounds, sometimes taking care of the monks, things like that. So all sorts of combination of different type of tasks at the temple. And some of them also live in the temple. So they're not monks, but they're like a worker, something like that. So he served as a temple hand, performing little services such as weeding, sweeping, and the like, and the monks supported him with food. Okay, so in this case, Radha, he didn't receive any monetary gain, but he did get food in return. When he asked to be ordained, however, the monks did not want to ordain him. One day, the Blessed One, in his mental survey of the world, saw that his Brahmin was mature for arahantship. So when the Buddha, he starts his day, he meditates with great compassion, and he kind of checks to see, okay, on that day, who would be ready to receive teaching. So on this particular day, he saw that this Brahmin's mental state was good. It was mature. And so he thought, okay, this is a good opportunity for his teaching. So the Blessed One inquired about Radha, from the assembled monks, and asked whether any one of them remembered ever receiving some help from the poor Brahmin. Venerable Sariputta said that he remembered on an occasion when he was going for alms in Rajagaha. And this poor Brahmin had given him a ladleful of alms food that he had begged for himself. Now, so Radha went out to get some food and then came back and gave that food to Venerable Sariputta. So the master asked Venerable Sariputta to ordain the man, which he did. And then Venerable Sariputta then advised him time and again as to what things should be done and what should be avoided. Radha always received his admonitions gladly without resentment, and in a short time he attained arahantship. On this occasion, the bhikkhus extolled Sariputta's sense of gratitude and said that he who himself willingly accepts advice obtains pupils who do the same. Commenting on this, the Buddha said that not only then, but also formerly, Sariputta had shown gratitude and remembered any good deed done to him. And in that connection, the master told the Alina Chitta Jataka, in which Venerable Sariputta was a grateful elephant who dedicated his life to help a team of carpenters that had nursed him when he was wounded. The Venerable Sariputta's powers of forbearance and humility came to the fore on an occasion when he was the victim of a false accusation. Okay. So even though despite Venerable Sariputta's great wisdom and how everyone knows him, still he was also a victim of false accusation. And this incident took place when he was dwelling at Jetavana. At the end of the rains retreat, the elder took leave of the master and departed with his own retinue of monks on a journey. A large number of monks also took leave of Venerable Sariputta, and in dismissing them, he addressed by name those who were known to him by their personal and family names. Among them, there was a monk who was not known by his personal and family name, but a strong desire arose in him that the chief disciple, Venerable Sariputta, should address him by those names in taking his departure. In the great throng of monks, however, Venerable Sariputta did not give him this distinction, and the monk was aggrieved. He does not greet me as he does the other monks, he thought, and conceived a grudge against Sariputta. So this was a large number of monks, and Venerable Sariputta would have known some, and he would probably not have known others, and this particular monk took a bit of, he was a bit annoyed, basically. He took grievance that Venerable Sariputta didn't address him by name. So he conceived a grudge. At the same time, it chanced that the hem of the elder's robe brushed against him, and this added to his grievance. So the hem of just the bottom part of the robe, maybe he was walking past and the robe brushed against this aggrieved monk and made him feel more upset. So he approached the Buddha and complained, "Lord, the Venerable Sariputta, doubtless thinking to himself, I am the chief disciple, struck me a blow that almost damaged my ear." Wow. And having done that without so much as begging my pardon, he set out on his journey. So that's quite a different story, the hem of the rope just brushing against him versus striking him with a blow that almost damaged the ear. That's quite drastically different, the story. So the Buddha summoned Sariputta into his presence. Meanwhile, Venerable Mahamoggallana and Venerable Ananda, knowing that a calumny was about to be exposed, summoned all the monks, convoking an assembly. "Approach, Venerable Sirs," they called. "When the Venerable Sariputta is face to face with the master, he will roar his lion's roar." And so it came about. When the master questioned the great elder, instead of denying the charge, he said, "Oh Lord, one who is not firmly established in the contemplation of the body with regard to his body, such a one may be able to hurt a fellow monk and leave without apologizing." Then followed Sariputta's lion's roar. He compared his freedom from anger and hatred with the patience of the earth, which receives all things, clean and unclean. His tranquility of mind to a bull with severed horns, to a lowly outcast youth, to water, fire, and wind, and to the removal of impurity. He compared the oppression he felt from his own body to the oppression of snakes and corpses, and the maintenance of his body to that of fatty excrescences. In 9 similes, he described his own virtues, and 9 times the great earth responded to the words of truth. The entire assembly was moved by the majestic force of his utterance. So what Venerable Sariputta basically is trying to establish wasn't to like say, "Oh, I didn't do such a thing," which is what most of us would automatically respond in. But what he's trying to say is, if a person is not well established in mindfulness, contemplation of the body with regard to the body, that's basically the first foundation of mindfulness of the body. What he's saying, if someone isn't like that, then yeah, that someone can hurt somebody else and won't apologize. But what he's trying to say is, I'm not like that. I am well established in my mindfulness. And then he gave examples how developed his mind was, and gave 9 similes of his own virtues, his own virtues, so his own qualities. And each time the great earth responded. So just like how when the Buddha was questioned, sometimes I think there were stories of he was questioned by Mara, and so the Buddha made again a similar kind of exclamation and touched the ground, and then the earth shook. So that the story goes that, you know, in essence, that is a confirmation of what they are saying. And so that's how Venerable Sariputta responded to that false accusation. So as the elder proclaimed his virtues, remorse filled the monk who had unjustly maligned him. Immediately he fell at the feet of the Blessed One, admitting his slander and confessing his fault. Thereupon the Buddha said, "Venerable Sariputta, pardon this deluded man, lest his head should split into 7 pieces." So the slander is, or slander of the Sangha is actually a very great crime for someone to commit. And what the Buddha is saying here is kind of, in a way, having great compassion for the monk who made that slander, so that hopefully he won't have to suffer so much. And so he asked Venerable Sariputta, please forgive this person so that he won't have to suffer. So Venerable Sariputta's reply was, "Venerable Sir, I freely pardon this venerable monk." And with joined palms he added, "May this venerable monk also pardon me if I have in any way offended him." So here is a very great example of how Venerable Sariputta practiced humility. He first forgave the person that falsely accused him, but not only left it there, he also asked for forgiveness in return. If I had offended you, maybe I didn't know, like I didn't address your name because there were so many people, but I didn't realize that. It was an error I didn't realize. Or my robe accidentally brushed you, but it offended you. Sorry, I didn't realize that. So in our, how should we say, daily routine, life, daily activity, there's always encounters all sorts of conditions that arise daily that we may have offended others unknowingly without intention to offend them, or we may have been offended by others just because of how we perceive the situation. And so for us, if we are offended daily, then it's always good practice to use the 6 R's or the never mind game and just forgive, because that also does help a lot in our practice of letting go. This is a very important practice. If we can continue to do this kind of practice throughout the day in anything we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, or think through the 6 sense spaces, anything that we feel offended or not even offended to the, just disturbed, feel some sort of grievance, then immediately is the best. Immediately, or as soon as we realize it, recognize it, and then just release, relax, we smile, return, and then forgive whoever or whatever it is that we felt grievance towards. And this will go a long way if we develop this habit again and again in our daily lives. It will go a really, really long way in helping our practice in the long run. So here, Venerable Sariputta, with joint palms, he added, "May this venerable monk also pardon me if I have in any way offended him." In this way, they were reconciled. So happy ending. The other monks were filled with admiration, saying, "See, brethren." Brethren is like a traditional way of addressing the whole gathering of monks. "The extraordinary goodness of the elder. He cherishes neither anger nor hatred against this lying, slanderous monk. Instead, he crouches before him, stretches his hand in reverence, and asks for pardon." The Buddha's comment was, "Monks, it is impossible for Venerable Sariputta and his like to cherish anger or hatred. Venerable Sariputta's mind is like the great earth, firm like a gatepost, like a pool of still water." He then recited the following verse: "Unresentful like the earth, firm like a gatepost, equipoised and strong in vows, mind without impurities, like a pool. For such a one, the round of births exists no more." So very pure mind. And also this reminds me back to one of the suttas in the Majjhima Nikaya, if I'm not mistaken, the Rahula Vada Sutta, where the Buddha gave some advice to Rahula on how to meditate like water, meditate like fire, meditate like the earth, meditate like. So when you say meditate like water, for example, water is unresentful. We use water to wash dirty things. We, clean ourselves with water. We clean things with water. People even throw all kinds of things into the river, into water. But the water never, at any one time, never complains, never, does anything against being treated like that. And so the Buddha's advice was meditate like water. And also water travels through, if you look at rivers, if there are rocks or obstacles in between, it just goes around it very nicely, flows around it, doesn't go against whatever is in its path. So meditate like water is a very good advice and good practice to follow if we can. So another incident of this nature did not end so happily, for the slanderer refused to admit his fault. He was a monk named Kokalika, who approached the Buddha with a slander against the 2 chief disciples. Sariputta and Moggallana have bad intentions, Lord, he said. They are in the grip of evil ambition. The master replied, do not say so, Kokkalika, do not say so. Have friendly and trustful thoughts towards Sariputta and Moggallana. They are of good and lovable behavior. But the misguided Kokkalika paid no heed to the Buddha's words. He persisted with his false accusation, and soon after that, his whole body became covered with boils, which continued to grow until eventually he died of his illness and was reborn in hell. So that's a not so happy ending. And this incident was well known. It is recorded in the following places: in the Sutta Pitaka, Samyutta Nikaya 6.10, in the Sutta Nipata, in the Mahavagga, in the Anguttara Nikaya 10.89, and in the Karya Jataka, number 481. A comparison of these two incidents reveals the importance of penitence. Penitence means having some sort of regret over one's actions and then asking for forgiveness. So neither Sariputta nor Moggallana bore the monk Kokkalika any ill will for his malice. So they don't have any grudge. And his apologies, had he offered them, would have made no difference to the attitude of the two chief disciples. So because Venerable Sariputta, Venerable Moggallana, both arahants, they don't take anything personal anymore. So to them, it's more just because of Venerable, the monk Kokkalika's, own perception, old misconception, nothing to do with them. And so they would, whether he apologized, whether he didn't, makes no difference. They don't take anything personal anymore. But they would have benefited the erring monk himself. If Kokkalika had made an apology, had asked for forgiveness, then of course he would have helped himself, averting the consequences of his bad karma. Evil rebounds upon those who direct it towards the innocent, and so Kokkalika was judged and punished by himself through his own deeds. Okay, so I'm just going to stop here. For now, I'll leave the chapter on friendships and relatives at another time, in another reading. But this is just a chapter that shows a couple of things. It shows the importance of not holding grudges. And so we see the example where despite the noble qualities of Venerable Sariputta and how he was so revered, and we read in the previous chapters how he played such a big role in training the monks, in taking care of the monks, and advising other lay people, including Nyanaponika, who, at Nyanaponika's deathbed, specifically requested Venerable Sariputta to come, give him a teaching. Despite all this, still he is not free from false accusations, from people having wrong views about him. And even then, even if he gets struck for no reason, like the first story we just read, he has he bears no grudge. He doesn't even think about it. It's like, so it's like, I don't know, what happened? So, which was the story we saw. And of course, we probably are not at that level of practice yet, but the very least we can do is to constantly train ourselves using the 6 R's, or if you like, the Nevermind game. Whenever we get angry or feel unjustly treated, or somebody said something to us that didn't seem right, or did something to us that didn't seem right, then hopefully we can remember to go think about, well, at least be inspired by Venerable Sariputta's story here and remember to just, oh, okay, it came up again in my mind. What am I feeling now? Not a very nice feeling. Getting angry is really not a nice feeling. Having this grudge, this anger, resentment in our hearts is really, really unpleasant. It is very tight. It is very unpleasant. It's, yeah, it's really not very good feeling. And if we continue to keep this over time, it just makes our body, everything just really sink, very heavy. And we want to continue our practice. So we want to relieve ourselves from all these. So the more we can remember to, okay, yeah, that happened. It's not easy, but this is part of the practice. Remember to recognize, that happened, okay, in my head. Yep, somebody said something. Because if we don't catch it very easily, that spiraling, that spinning, that looping of that particular story continues in our mind. And then we take it very personal. And by doing that, continuous looping, not catching it in time, not recognizing that, whoops, I've gone into looping, release, relax, re-smile, return to forgiving. What happens if we don't cut and stop it there, that looping gets bigger and bigger. We have personalized it. And what is the first of the Noble Eightfold Path? Harmonious perspective, which is basically everything is impersonal. We need to just keep reminding ourselves that whatever that person said, that was subject to the conditions that arose at that time, and what he or she said depends on how he or she perceives things at that particular time in those particular conditions that arise. So what is there to be personal of? And we have to keep, in a way, just keep doing the 6 hours. We are actually essentially just brainwashing ourselves there. The other sutta that is commonly read at the last day of any retreat and twin retreat usually is the simile of the soul from the Majjhima Nikaya. So that's also a good reminder, the simile of the soul, how even when we feel unjust, we can remember to quickly bring in the 6 hours before the looping gets out of control. And then we find a lot of relief and happiness here and now. Okay, so let's conclude there. Any questions or comments from anyone that dialed in? No? Was that useful? I hope it was useful. We will continue the chapter on friendships and friends and relatives some other time. So next Sunday, we have invited Dr. Indu Shakya, who will come and talk to us about his latest book title of the book is Beyond the Edge of the Universe. And Dr. Sakya is a very long-term twin practitioner and also a strong supporter of Bhante Vimalaramsi for many years. So we've invited him to come and give us short talk about his latest book. And then the Sunday after, on the 24th, Hugh Polton will come and give a talk. Okay? So I'm just going to try and share. the sheet on sharing merits. Okay. So if there are no questions, let us, oops, okay. If there are no questions, then let us let us share merits together. May suffering ones be suffering free and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu. Thank you so much for dialing in. I wish you all a very good week. And remember to keep smiling throughout the day from morning till night as much as you can. It is one of the most helpful practice to keep our mindfulness going. If we find being mindful difficult, then just try the option of keep remembering to just smile at anything that occurs throughout the day. Just smile at it. It will be very, very helpful. Okay, so I'll leave it there. And we will come back together again next Sunday. Have a good week. Take care.